नमस्ते प्रिय संस्कृत मित्राणि युष्माकं संस्कृताध्ययनं सम्यक् चलति किम्? अहम् आशां करोमि यत् भाषायाः स्वादः युष्माकं मुखे अस्ति। कृपया संस्कृतं वदत because I have started with युष्माकं, so कृपया संस्कृतं वदत, पठत, लिखत च. So, namaste dear friends, I sincerely hope that your Sanskrit studies are going on well and that you're beginning to get the taste of the language in your mouths, and please ensure that you are speaking it, reading it and writing it. And I just want to mention that grammatically I said yuyam kripaya vadata because it is yuyam vadata since I'm addressing you with the informal second person case. Alright, so having said this, we've been looking at the third person pronouns and nouns in the dual case, and we've gone up to the fifth case. So in this particular lecture, which is lecture number 22, we will continue in that same series and look at the third person pronouns and nouns for the masculine, feminine, neuter in the dual, and this is part 4 of that series. So here we are going to do an introduction to the sixth case for the pullinga and neuter words ending with a, and also for the strilinga words ending with a and e in the dvivachana or the dual case, dual forms. And then we'll do a revision of the ajna, the imperative, and the anadyatana bhuta or the lang or the imperfect past forms. So the ajna is also known as the lot, as we have seen earlier. And then there is of course this intention of trying to build your vocabulary also. So let's do a quick recap of the third person pronouns and nouns in the dual up to the fifth case for the masculine and neuter words in this table. So here we have the masculine and neuter words. So the question word is kaha and the answer. So what I'll do is I will ask you the question and in the answer already introduce the noun there. Alright. So kaha asti saha janakaha asti. In the dual, kau staha tau janakau staha. Uttamam. So tau and etau, I'll be using only the tau for the moment in order to save on time, but feel free to practice etau as well. Next, kam pashyati. So the moment I say kam pashyati, who's the subject? Saha or bhavan or bhavati. Sa and all the third person as well as bhavan or bhavati. So kam pashyati, tam janakam pashyati. In the dual, kau pashyati, tau janakau pashyati. So here we are saying ti because it is saha tau janakau. The subject is still saha tau janakau pashyati. Unlike in the first case where we had changed the verb into tau janakau staha because they were the doers of that action. Alright. So this computing, this constant computing of the words and understanding the relationship is very important in order to speak this language correctly. Moving on, we see in the third, fourth and fifth cases that kena gachati, with whom are you going? Kena bhavan or bhavati gachati, or I'll stick to the saha. So saha kena gachati, just kena gachati, and the answer is tena janakena gachati. And what happens in the dual? Kabhyam gachati, tabhyam. So tabhyam janakabhyam gachati. What happens to the fourth case? So kasmai dadati, tasmai janakaya dadati. And in the dual, kabhyam dadati becomes tabhyam janakabhyam dadati. And in the fifth case, kasmat swikaroti. From whom does he take? From the two of them? From one of them. So tasmat janakat swikaroti. The whole sentence in the dual now. Kabhyam swikaroti, tabhyam janakabhyam swikaroti. Alright, so we've seen it up to here. Now let's do a quick recap till there. So kau, kabhyam, kabhyam, kabhyam. And in the for the tat becomes tau, tau, tabhyam, tabhyam, tabhyam. And what happens to Janaka? So Janakau, Janakau, Janakabhyam, Janakabhyam, Janakabhyam. So the second case, the dual, as you can see, is relatively easy to remember. What happens to the neuter? So the neuter, like you can see, kim asti, and the answer tat mitram asti or etat mitram asti. In the dual, ke staha, te mitre staha. Uttamam. In the second case, what happens? It's identical. So, kim pashyati, tat mitram pashyati. In the dual, yeah, so ke pashyati, and the answer is te mitre pashyati. Uttamam. Moving on to the third, fourth and fifth cases. So, just like the masculine, so kena gachati, answer in the singular, tena gachati. If it's in the dual, kabhyam gachati, tabhyam mitrabhyam gachati. Uttamam. And the fourth case, kasmai dadati, answer in the singular, to that friend, tasmai mitraya dadati. In the dual case, kabhyam dadati, answer tabhyam mitrabhyam dadati. So to the two friends, uttamam. And then the final one, the fifth case, which is kasmat swikaroti, answer from that friend, tasmat mitrat swikaroti. Uttamam. And the dual case, from which two people do you take, which two friends? So kabhyam swikaroti. We'll not put the friends in the answer as yet. So which two do you take from kabhyam swikaroti? Answer being tabhyam mitrabhyam swikaroti. Uttamam. And what happens in the sambodhanam? So for the masculine it was he janaka. In the dual case, he janakau. So if I wanted to say, oh father, come, it will be he janaka agachatu. Two of them, he janakau agachatam. Uttamam. And what happens to the neuter? He mitra agachatu. Two of them, he mitre agachatam. Uttamam. Alright, so I hope you've got a hang of this one in the masculine. And maybe just for a quick exercise, will you try making the sentence for me? That I give the book to those two fathers and those two friends. I give the book to those two fathers and those two friends. Yes, so you have it. I give. Let's get the verb. Aham dadami. So I haven't put the aham here because you have two options. You can either do this or you can do hum. So which one would you, what would you put there? Depends on the next word. So if the, let's make the whole sentence. Aham dadami. Question is kim dadami? Answer is pustakam dadami. Kabhyam pustakam dadami. Tabhyam, to those fathers, those two fathers will be tabhyam janakabhyam, and those two friends. So tabhyam mitrabhyam dadami. Kim dadami? Pustakam dadami. Now let's make that sentence together. Aham tabhyam janakabhyam tabhyam mitrabhyam cha pustakam dadami. So it was aham tabhyam. So there's a ta that follows, and because there is a ta which is a consonant, this one is going to be correct and not this. Alright, in the written form of it. Can we say that sentence once together? Aham tabhyam janakabhyam tabhyam mitrabhyam cha pustakam dadami. Uttamam. So let's move on to the next slide. Here we'll do a revision of the table in the feminine. So what do we have here? Ka asti. Answer, that lady, that mother. So sa amba asti, And if we wanted to say that sister, sa sahodari asti. Uttamam. Now in the dual, K. So ka doesn't become cow, it becomes K. So K staha becomes te ambe staha, just like te mitre, te ambe staha. And what happens in the for the ikara word? Te, so two of them, te sahodarye no, te sahodaryau staha. Uttamam. Moving on. Kam pashyati. So tam ambam tam sahodarim cha pashyati. Uttamam. Now let's do that in the dual. Ke pashyati. Answer. Te ambe te sahodaryau cha pashyati. Uttamam. Third case, so third, fourth, fifth is the same. And what's the good news? As you can see on the board, that it is kabhyam, just like in the masculine. So all this entire range is just like in the masculine with the bhyam. So what happens? Kaya kachati, with the mother and the sister. So with that mother and with that sister. So taya ambaya taya sahodarya cha gachati. Dual case, kabhyam gachati, tabhyam ambabhyam, tabhyam sahodaribhyam cha gachati. Now here the question is kabhyam as in two people. So it would be easier probably to break it up. So tabhyam ambabhyam gachati, because only two of them. Then it is correct with the question. And you can say tabhyam sahodaribhyam cha gachati. Okay, so you can separate it out there. Moving on, kasyai dadati becomes tasyai ambayai dadati. We'll keep it till there. And if you do that in the dual, it will be kabhyam dadati, tabhyam ambabhyam dadati. And in the feminine, kabhyam dadat, and in the ikara strilinga word, it will be kabhyam dadati, tabhyam sahodaribhyam dadati. Uttamam. And from, so kabhyam swikaroti. In the singular, it will be kasyaha swikaroti. That will be tasyaha ambayaha swikaroti. For the ikara, it becomes tasyaha sahodaryaha swikaroti. And if you have to say it in the dual case, it will be kabhyam swikaroti, tabhyam ambabhyam swikaroti. What about the ikara word? Tabhyam sahodaribhyam swikaroti. Uttamam. And finally for the sambodhanam, he ambe agachatu, and in the dual, he ambe, it's the same thing. Alright, so you have to keep that in mind. He ambe agachatam. And what happens to sahodari? He sahodari agachatu, and he sahodaryau agachatam. Uttamam. So let's look at, try and make a sentence here. So what I'll do is I'll give you a sentence in the singular first and then do the sentence for me in the dual case. So I'd like to say she gives flowers to that mother and to that sister. She gives flowers to that mother and that sister. So the verb being, so sa dadati, to whom? Tasyai ambayai, and tasyai sahodaryai. Kim dadati? Pushpani. Okay, so let's make that sentence. Sa tasyai ambayai tasyai sahodaryai cha pushpani dadati. Let's make that in the dual case now. So we'll keep the sa as sa itself to keep matters simple. So sa tabhyam ambabhyam, tabhyam, sahodaribhyam cha pushpani dadati. Uttamam. So I hope you figured that out. Let's do a quick recap of that. So ke, kabhyam, kabhyam, kabhyam. What happens to the te, tat in the feminine? So te, tabhyam, tabhyam, tabhyam. Uttamam. Amba, ambe, ambe, ambabhyam, 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 and sambodhanam, hey ambe. And what happens finally in the ikara word? So you have sahodari, sahodaryau, sahodaryau, sahodaribhyam, 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 he sahodaryau. Uttamam. So let's move on. Let's do a quick recap also of the ajna, of the verb conjugation. So we look at the ajna and the anadyatana bhuta, or the imperfect past. So here we have the verbs vadatu in the ajna. So vadatu, please speak, or if it's an order, then vadatu, depends on the tone. So vadatu, vadatam, vadantu. Repeat after me. Kripaya vadantu, vadatu, vadatam, vadantu. Next, vada, vadatam, vadata, vadani, vadav, vadam. And like we've been doing the verbs earlier on also, what we need to always bear in mind is the entire grid of the subjects, because the subjects are not being articulated, yet in your mind you have to hold the subjects clearly in order to ensure that the rest of your sentence is correct. Okay, so what do we notice here? We see that there is no visarga, first of all. In comparison with the Vartamana Kala, the E drops and is replaced by the U. So vadatu and vadantu instead of vadati and vadanti. And then we have vada, nothing added to that. And in the ami, becomes ani, vadani, means let me speak. Okay, may I speak, let me speak. It has that kind of an implication. And the most important thing is this L in the middle, which is tam, tam, ta. So vadatam, vadatam, vadata, and no visarga below that. All right. So let's do a verb here. Let me say patatu. Let's do it together. Patatu, patatam, patantu, patha, patatam, patata, pathani, pathava, pathama. Uttamam. Let's do the bhutakala and see what happens there. So with the bhutakala, what do we notice? So there's a lot of visuals involved as well. So there's a lot of hearing and there's a lot of visuals involved in the learning of the Sanskrit grammar. So here, like you can see, the difference is the to indicate the past tense, that which is not there now. So implying the past. So satya, that which is true. Asatya, the absence of truth. So the often in Sanskrit implies the absence of. Okay. So therefore in this context of the verb, it would imply the past tense. So we have avadat, avadatam, avadan, avadah, only place where there is a visarga. Avadatam, avadata, avadam, avadav, and avadam. So again, you can do a little similar comparison with the Vartamana Kala or the present tense and see that the E sort of drops out in the third person singular and plural, and in the first person singular as well. And there is no visarga, tam, tam, ta, the visarga gets shifted to the twam. Alright. So I'd also like to mention here that when we learnt, when we did the introduction to basic spoken Sanskrit, I did not enter into the Bhutakala too much because it has these variations that are a little more complex than the simple past forms that we learnt. So what would tatra kim vayam drishtavantah? So what did we see there? Instead of saying vadati, avadat in the past tense, we said uktavan, or instead of saying agachat, we are saying gatavan. So what do we see there? That for the third person, second person and first person, or the prathama, madhyama and uttama purushaha, it is replaced by gatavan in the singular. So gatavan and gatavati. So there is a gender question of gender when you're using the simplified past, which is not there when you do the regular verb conjugation. Similarly, in the dual case, we have gatavantau or gatavatyau, and in the plural, gatavantaha or gatavatyah. Now let's just do a quick practice with the verb agachat. Can you do that for me? Agachat, agachatam, agachan, agachaha, agachatam, agachata, agacham, agachav, agacham. Uttamam. I'd like draw your attention to this table on top here, where we have the bhuadi gana or the verbs from the first group, and here we have the root bhu, which becomes bhavatu in the lot or the ajna. In the bhuta it becomes abhavat. Pat becomes pathatu and apathat. Gam, to go, becomes gachatu and agachat. Uttamam. Stha, to stand, becomes tishtatu and atishtat. Both of these forms going back to the way the present was formed, as in tishtati. And the last one also had this similar kind of modification, verb modification, where drish, to see, became pashyati in the present tense, and here pashyatu and apashyat. Uttamam. So I hope you have a hang of this table. Let's move on to do looking at the past form or the bhutakala of the root as. As, as we have already seen, means to be, and it is a very important verb, and it is a verb from the second group. Okay, and what happens here? We say asit. So saha asit, tau astam, te asan, tvam asihi, yuvam astam, yuyam asta, aham asam, avam asva, vayam asma. Uttamam. So here I also have a small table for you of words that will do a parichaya or an introduction of oneself. So they are identity related words, and you can mix and match with the table that we have here of verbs, keeping in mind the gender and the number. So for example, if you say saha balaha asti or asit, because it's in the past tense, saha balaha, meaning a small boy, asit. In the feminine it becomes sa bala asit. Uttamam. Two of them, tau balau astam. Ladies, te bale astam. Uttamam. Plural, te. So the te the same, but here it is a plural masculine. So te balaha asan. Feminine, taha balaha asan. So what do you notice here? That although it is balaha in the masculine plural, it is also balaha in the feminine plural, like we have seen before. So you really have to be very, very attentive to get this language right. Okay, moving on. So yuvakaha, meaning youth. In the feminine it is yuvati. You can also say that with the tvam. So let's practice the yuvakaha with the tvam. So tvam yuvakaha asihi, you were a young man. Tvam yuvati asihi, the same there. Okay. Next, yuvam yuvakaha yuvakau astam, and yuvam yuvatyau astam. Plural, yuyam yuvakaha asta, and the feminine yuyam yuvatyaha asta. Uttamam. And let's do it with aham. So aham vriddhaha asam. So what sense does that mean? You have to fill in that sense with the right side of your brain of the image. So while your head is using the language, I was an old person. How can you put that in a context? So maybe at some point you were feeling tired and old in your mind. So I was an old person. Now I'm young. You get energized by maybe doing yoga, some exercise, going to some new place, and you feel energized. So you can make the sentence aham vriddhaha asam or vriddha asam, and then idanim or adhuna yuvakaha asmi. I was old and now I'm young. And what would happen in the dual? Avam yuvakau aswa, present tense, or no, and in the feminine would be avam yuvatyau aswa. Plural, vayam yuvakaha asma, feminine, vayam yuvatyaha asma. Uttamam. Now let's look at the word for the son, putraha and putri. Father, janakaha and janani for the mother. Grandfather, paternal side, pitamaha, mother, pitamahi, grandmother, paternal side. Paternal grandparents, maternal grandparents would be matamaha and matamahi. Now completely different kind of identity about your likes here and what you know. So priyaha, you can say aham Sanskrita priyaha asam. I hope you still, I'm sure that we all are. So vayam Sanskrita priyaha asma, and I'm hoping we are still that. So priyaha, and for the lady, priya, Sanskrita priya, Sangita priya, Krida priya, etc. Knower of would be shastrajnyaha, shastrajnya, feminine. And baddhaha, bound, aham baddhaha, a man will say, and a lady would say aham baddha asam, and now I am or I am also free, you would say aham muktaha asam, aham mukta asam, means I was free. Alright, so let's move on now. Let's do some practice, and in this practice we are going to look at the sixth case of the third person pronouns and nouns. So here we have the sixth case, which is kasya in the masculine and neuter, and feminine it is kasyaha. And what's the good news? We see that both of them take on the form kayoho. So here we have tasya purushasya nama vinayaha asti, two of them, tayoho purushayoho namani. So this is very important to know. Now there are two names and therefore it will be namani. So nama, namani, namani. Why? Because the root form of the word nama is naman. Alright, it ends with a consonant naman, and therefore it gets on these words. We'll look at similar kind of things later on in this in the series. So tasya purushasya nama vinayaha asti, two of them, tayoho purushayoho namani ashokaha ashutoshaha cha staha, and tesham purushanam namani bibhanshuda sumanda piyushaha rajeshaha cha santi. So the verb has to go with the number of the names there. Let's move on. Tasya deshasya nama, fill in the blanks. Dual, tayoho deshayoho namani, fill in the blanks. And plural, tesham deshanam namani. Done. Nagara, so tasya nagarasya nama da da da, two of them, tayoho nagarayoho namani, whatever. And finally tesham nagaranam namani. Uttamam. Let's do one with etasya at least. So etasya mitrasya nama. Uttamam. Next etayoho mitrayoho namani, and plural etesham mitranam namani. Uttamam. Let's move on to the next one, which is the feminine here. And what do we see? It is tasyaha ambayaha, becomes in the dual tayoho ambayoho. In the plural, tasam ambanam. Alright, now let's try and put that into a sentence. So what I am saying here is that tasyaha ambayaha krite shatikaha kretum apanam agachat. Moment you see agachat, who should be the subject? Saha. So saha or sa tat, I mean the whole third person and second person formal masculine and feminine. Now saha tasyaha ambayaha krite shatikaha kretum apanam agachat. With for those two mothers, saha tayoho ambayoho krite shatikah kretum apanam agachat. And for many of them, saha tasam ambanam krite shatikah kretum apanam agachat. Let's do it for Gaika. Saha tasyaha gaikayaha krite apanam agachat. I'm just skipping it here now. For two of them, tayoho gayikayoho krite apanam agachat. And for many, tasam gaikanam krite apanam agachat. Uttamam. What happens to the ikara word? So here we have tasyaha sahodaryaha krite apanam agachat. Dual case will become tayoho sahodaryoho krite apanam agachat. Plural, tasam sahodarinam krite apanam agachat. Uttamam. And yuvati, tasyaha yuvatyaha krite apanam agachat. Two of them, tayoho yuvatyoho krite apanam agachat. Plural, tasam yuvatinam krite apanam agachat. Uttamam. And what do we have here? So there's a lot of practice of the verb forms as well. So just like we had saha agachat, in the dual it will become tau agachatam. Plural, te agachan. Tvam agachaha. Yuvam agachatam. Yuyam agachata. Aham agacham. Avam agachava. Vayam agachama. Okay, now your turn to make a sentence here. So, we went to the shop to buy saris for the sake of the two young women. Those two young women. I'll repeat that. The two of us went to the shop to buy, for the sake of buying saris for those two young women. Alright, got it? So, the two of us, easy, avam. Agachava, immediately with that. Kutra agachava, shatikah kretum apanam agachava. For whom? For those two young ladies. So, young ladies yuvati and those two tayoho. So, tayoho yuvatyoho krite shatikah kretum apanam agachava. In fact, if you say this, it is enough. You don't even need to say the avam. That could just be there for practice. Alright, so uttamam. I hope you can practice this with a little time in hand. Let's move on to just see, do a recap of this. And what do we see here? We see that for the Shashti, irrespective of whether it's a masculine or a feminine or a neuter word, all of them get this form kayoho, tayoho or etayoho, janakayoho or mitrayoho, and in the feminine it is ambayoho or sahodaryoho. Uttam. So it's all the same form there. And we've been seeing that, you know, the 6th and the 7th are similar, but that's something that we look at the next lesson when we get there. So let's see an application of what we've learnt in a verse. So this particular shloka is said to belong to the Ramayana, and it's very interesting because it says that, you know, gaganam gaganakaram sagaram sagaropamaha Rama Ravana yor yuddham Rama Ravana yoriva. So first and foremost, let's do the grammar here. So it says gaganam gaganakaram gaganam gagana akara. So there is a kind of a sandhi there, but it's in the compound word. Gagana akara gaganakara sagara sagara upamaha. Upamaha is equated to, so that upama sagara upama becomes sagaropamaha, but this is a compound word, a sandhi within a compound word. And then Rama Ravana yor yuddham. So did you recognize it? Yes. Rama Ravana yor. So this is yoho plus yuddham. Okay, I'm just giving you that much there. And Rama Ravana yoriva. So yes. So it's there. Rama Ravana yoho iva. Okay, so what is it saying here? So what is this part saying here? It's saying that the sky is like sky, the ocean like ocean, Rama and Ravana's battle was like the battle between Rama and Ravana. So this was, I picked it up from Swami Krishnananda's book, where he's trying to talk about the description. Somebody asks, but how was the battle between Rama and Ravana? But it's in the context of trying to describe the soul. So if somebody asks a comparison for the soul, it is very difficult to give a description of the soul or a comparison, because it is as unique as the battle between Rama and Ravana. So he says, how was the battle between Rama and Ravana? Someone asked, what is the comparison? And this is the verse that is given there. The sky is like sky, the ocean is like ocean. Rama and Ravana's battle was like the battle of Rama and Ravana. And he says you cannot compare it with anything else because they were incomparable occurrences. Alright, so I'd like you to repeat this after me. Gaganam gaganakaram Sagara sagaropamaha Rama Ravanayoryuddha Rama Ravanayoryuddham Rama Ravanayoriva Uttamam. So let's look at this quotation by Dr. David Frawley, where talking about the Ramayana, he says, no ancient story, not even Homer's Iliad or Odyssey, has remained as popular through the course of time. The story of Rama appears as old as civilization and has a fresh appeal for every generation. So the influence of the Ramayana is incredible across the whole of the Southeast Asia. So if you ever go to these regions, you will see the living presence of these tales even in today's world. So here are some references, and the book that I had taken that shloka from is Sadhana, the Spiritual Way by Swami Krishnananda. Shantirastu Sanskritam Patitva Yushmakam Jivane Shantirastu. May peace be yours.